She quietly blinked back tears, while the others toasted above her pain. They called her the Help, as if the title could diminish her. They stepped on her spirit with smiles disguised as politeness. But in her heart, she carried something that none of their crystal glasses could ever hold: true, unconditional love. And on the day they tried to erase her in front of everyone, the boy stood up. Because sometimes the only voice that truly matters is that of the child who never forgot, who held his hand in the dark. She is my mother. The Montgomery mansion felt more like a museum. Cold marble floors, immaculate staircases, and flowers that were replaced before they could ever wilt. From the outside, it was a portrait of beauty. Inside, it was defined by silence. A silence of affection, of presence, of time. Victoria and Edward Montgomery were far too consumed with galas, overseas trips, and their social standing. Arthur, their only son, was another flawless item in the family's display case. He had the best room, the most expensive toys, and almost no one's arms to run into. That was when Elena arrived. Hair tied back, a simple uniform, and hands that moved with care. She didn't speak much, but her actions said everything. In the way she served his plate, tucked in his blanket, or whispered a story beside his bed. Arthur, just 3 years old, clung to her like someone finding shelter in a storm. At first, Victoria found it cute. "He's certainly taken a liking to you, hasn't he?" she'd say, laughing with a hint of disdain while applying her lipstick. Eleanor would only smile. It wasn't about being liked. It was about caring. As the days turned into months, it was this quiet woman who taught Arthur how to brush his teeth, to say please, to understand that it was okay to feel sad. All of it was done in silence. All of it was done with heart. But there was something in Victoria's gaze. The look of someone who sees too much. The look of someone who feels they are losing their place. Victoria couldn't stand the thought of not being the center of her son's world. She had chosen to be a mother, yes, but not the kind who wakes up in the middle of the night to a child's fever. She preferred to outsource everything, even love. Edward, her husband, was even more of a ghost. He spent his days glued to his phone, even at the dinner table. He only spoke to Arthur when he needed a new photo for the company's Instagram feed. And there, in the middle of that luxurious emptiness, was Elena. She arrived early and left late. She knew exactly which stuffed animal Arthur needed to sleep, his preference for warm milk with a touch of honey, and his deep fear of thunderstorms. Most importantly, she knew when his smile was real, and when it was just to please everyone else. But the affection between them began to grate on the masters of the house. Victoria started watching more closely. "Elena, don't forget that you are his nanny, not his mother," she said one day, her voice as cold as the ice in her drink. Chloe, the socialite's best friend, laughed mockingly. "That boy's going to grow up thinking he came from the nanny's arms." Elena would lower her head. She knew her place, or at least she thought she did. But Arthur didn't. To him, she was the person who knew him better than anyone in the world, and that was precisely what was becoming a problem in that house. The ballroom was packed. It was Arthur's 6th birthday. Ambient music, uniformed waiters, golden balloons, and a dessert table that looked like it was ripped from a magazine cover. Elena stood in the corner, as always. She watched attentively, waiting to see if Arthur needed anything. She knew he hated crowds. She recognized every flicker of emotion on his small face. And she saw, from across the room, the moment his eyes started searching for hers. He navigated through the maze of guests and ran straight to Elena. "Will you come cut the cake with me?" he asked, a hopeful smile on his face, pulling her by the hand. Elena hesitated, but she couldn't find the courage to say no. When she approached the main table, everyone was already in position to sing. Victoria saw the scene and froze, the nanny there, next to her son, holding his hand. Fury surged through her, but the smile on her face never faltered. She waited for the song to end. And then, in front of everyone, with the champagne flute in her hand, she said just loud enough for all to hear, "Elena, darling, you can go back to your post now. The staff isn't really part of the party, is it? A few quiet snickers rippled through the crowd. Chloe barely hid her smirk. Edward didn't even look up. Arthur stood motionless. Elena slowly let go of his hand and looked down at the floor. "I'm sorry, I just wanted to cut the cake with him," she murmured, her voice barely a whisper. "Cut the cake?" Victoria scoffed. "You already eat in our kitchen. It's quite enough without you trying to be in the guest photos." Eleanor walked away in silence, weaving through a sea of fake smiles and gazes that cut through her like glass. Arthur stood frozen, watching her go, his eyes welling up. But he said nothing, not yet. The next day, the mansion was quieter than ever. Elena arrived at her usual time, but her uniform wasn't in the closet. Victoria was waiting for her in the kitchen, arms crossed. "We will no longer be requiring your services." Cold, final, without explanation. Elena tried to understand. "Was it because of yesterday? I didn't mean to cause a scene, But you did cause a scene. And it's past time you remembered you're paid to stay in the background." Edward never showed up. Chloe, who had stayed the night, walked past with a triumphant smile as if watching the final act of a play. Arthur woke up late. When he came down the stairs, he found Elena by the door, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, clutching her worn-out purse. He ran to her. "Where are you going?" Eleanor couldn't answer. She just hugged him, a long, painful embrace. She knew it would be the last. Victoria pulled the boy away by his arm. "She's going to her own house, my love. She's been here long enough. Now you have school, new friends, other people to be around." Elena left without looking back, but she left something behind, hidden on a shelf in his room. The storybook they used to write in together, a place where the world still made sense. In the days that followed, Arthur looked for her. He called out for Elena before bed, at breakfast, after school. Victoria would always say, "She was just the nanny. You'll forget her." But he didn't forget. He began to withdraw, to smile less. He guarded that notebook like a priceless treasure, and silently something began to grow inside him. Absence, and with it, memory. Have you ever seen someone treated as if they were worthless, even when they were everything? Elena gave her all, and she was discarded like a piece of misplaced furniture. If this scene ties a knot in your throat too, leave a yes in the comments, just to show that there are still people in this world who feel. Time passed. Almost 2 years. Elena now lived in a humble but lively neighborhood. She shared a small house with Mrs. Gable, a widow who needed help and companionship. In return, she offered Elena a home and warmth. During the day, Elena cared for 2 toddlers at a community daycare. At night, she took classes for elder care and literacy tutoring. She never complained. She never said she was tired. But in the quiet moments, she thought of Arthur. Did he still remember her? Meanwhile, at the mansion, everything was the same. On the surface. Arthur was growing up. He was no longer a child. He was a quiet, introspective teenager with a maturity his parents couldn't comprehend. He did well in school, but a part of him always seemed distant. One afternoon, while cleaning his room, he found the notebook Elena had left behind. He flipped through the stories, the drawings, the sentences she wrote in her neat cursive. There, tucked between the pages, was a dedication. "You are the best part of my day. No matter where I am, I will be with you. Always." Arthur couldn't hold it in any longer. He sat on the floor and cried for the first time in years, and he understood. He hadn't forgotten her. He had just learned to be silent. From that day on, he started searching. He scoured websites, online forums, even social media. It took months, until he found an old photo of Elena holding a sign for a community literacy program. It was her. Without telling his parents, he began to write letters. 3, 4, 5, no reply. But on the 6th, an envelope arrived in return. It was from her. "Arthur, my boy, I never stopped loving you. I only wanted to give you the freedom to grow. But if you still want to see me, I'll be here." He wanted to. and he set the date. The Academy's auditorium was full once again. It was the afternoon of Arthur's award ceremony, for academic excellence and community leadership, a point of pride for parents who barely knew what subjects he studied. Victoria had hired photographers. Edward was shaking hands with business partners. Chloe, as always, was there to applaud whatever shined brightest, as long as it didn't outshine her. Arthur, dressed in a suit, his face serious and his gaze determined, walked onto the stage with a presence no one had anticipated. The headmaster praised his achievements, spoke about responsibility, and announced that Arthur would give a brief speech. He took a deep breath. He took the microphone. "I'd like to thank my teachers and my parents, but there is one person without whom none of this would be possible. She taught me how to speak, how to show respect, how to be the person I am today." Victoria preened, smiling for the cameras. "And this person, she isn't among the guests of honor, because she was never treated like one. She was forgotten, humiliated, and yet she loved me every single day as if I were her own." A murmur spread through the room. Arthur looked toward the back of the auditorium, and he held out his hand. "Elena, please come up here." The doors opened. She walked in slowly, wearing a simple dress. Her hair now had streaks of grey, but her eyes, they were the same. Victoria's eyes widened in disbelief. Edward froze. Chloe muttered, "That's impossible." Elena climbed the steps slowly, and before she could say a word, Arthur hugged her, a strong, true embrace. "She is my mother, and not a single person here can tell me otherwise." The hall fell silent. Not out of respect, but out of shame. Elena trembled in Arthur's arms, not from fear, but from the power of that moment. She never expected this. She never sought a spotlight or recognition. She just wanted him to grow up well, to be loved. But here, in front of them all, the boy she had rocked to sleep was now defending her as no one ever had. Victoria tried to stand, to say something, to regain control, but Arthur just looked at her, not with anger, but with a kind of pity that cuts deeper than contempt, the look of someone who understands, but doesn't forget. Elena tried to pull back shyly. "Arthur, you didn't have to," but he held her hand firmly. "Yes, I did. You taught me to always tell the truth, and today, this is my truth." They walked off the stage together. No rush, no audience mattered, because the one person who did had already seen everything. Back in her seat, Victoria remained frozen. The applause she so desperately craved was being given to another woman, and in Eleanor's eyes, as she walked through that corridor of silence and shock, there was no vanity, only peace. It isn't blood that sustains a love. It's presence. It's care. It's the patience of the one who stays when everyone else is too busy. Elena never wanted to take anyone's place. She simply filled a space that had been left empty for far too long. And when someone loves that deeply, that love doesn't vanish. It grows. It may go quiet, but it never dies. What Arthur did wasn't revenge. It was a justice of the heart. It was the healing that so many are too afraid to seek. How many Elenas are out there? How many true bonds are treated as disposable by those who can only see status? Their story isn't just about motherhood. It's about being present, about valuing the people who show up when no one else does, and about understanding that sometimes the person everyone overlooks is the one who taught us how to see. If this story touched you in any way, please leave a like. It shows that stories with truth, pain, and love still have a place in this world. And tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I read everything with care and make a point to reply to those who take a moment to share. If you believe in the power of stories like this, stories that move you, that awaken you, and that make you think, please subscribe to the channel. This project is just beginning, and every new subscriber gives me the strength to keep telling the stories that too many people silence. And now, don't go just yet. Choose one of the two stories appearing on your screen. I'll see you in the next video. She was humiliated in front of everyone, treated as if she was nothing, even though she had raised that boy with silent love. At a lavish party, the contempt felt like a physical blow, but no one could have predicted the response that would come years later. A true and emotional story about invisible bonds, social injustice, and the power of a love that doesn't need blood to be real. Watch until the end and prepare your heart.